Yeah?
Huh, we're on the air!
Okay,
Right
thanks.
in the last second. And my audio's working, apparently. How you doing, Brand?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Okay, so switch back to your camera for a second
Okay.
so that we can enjoy the glory of your liquor cabinet, your home organ. Now we can play
That's
guessing game in the audience. What is
it's a
behind
hutch.
Brand?
Oh, I gave it away.
What is it?
It's a hutch.
What kind of animals?
No, it's just got China in it right now.
Oh wait, is this a Chicago word that I don't know?
Maybe. So yeah, it's a cabinet. It's like a glass cabinet.
And you call that a hutch?
That's what my wife called it when we bought it. So
Oh, okay.
I just had to move it into the house. I don't do much with it.
And you call it whatever you're told to call it. I get that.
Yeah,
It's fine.
she calls it a hutch, so that's what I call it.
Cool. So, for everyone who's watching us now live or later in the reposted recording, this is an offshoot of the Acquia podcast. This is called Jam's Drupal Camp, which I think is a pretty catchy name. And I had the idea that I get to see a lot of cool sessions, people talking about technology, talking about Drupal especially, but other things too. And some of these sessions just kind of get lost, or it's hard to really find something from the past. And I'd like to take the chance to just bring some more attention to some things that I thought were cool and exciting. So I dreamed up the virtual Drupal camp, which you can find on acquia.com. It has a landing page, and it'll be also included in the acquia.com/podcast stream and in the blog stream. So welcome everyone who's watching. Today I have with me Brant Wynn, who also happens to work at Acquia, and I believe your title is something like Solutions Architect. Is that right, Brant?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. So let's talk about you for a minute. How tell us your first Drupal memory.
My first Drupal memory, actually, I think it was on, well, it was on Craigslist. I was looking for jobs and I was a PHP guy, and everything said Drupal. So they all said Drupal or WordPress experience is a huge plus. And I said, well, I know about WordPress. I should probably learn about this Drupal if people are going to hire me to work on it, right? And so in the past, I had worked on some like CMS that I had built for clients, and when I found Drupal, I realized that I had just been totally reinventing the wheel and doing a really poor job at it compared to Drupal. So the first Drupal real memory that I have was a site where I had a client that just wanted to be able to log in. They just needed logins, and I had written the custom login for them, and it had taken me something like 20 hours or something like that. And I think a couple days later, I found Drupal and found that I could have just installed Drupal. So that was probably my first memory.
Okay. And what looking for work on Craigslist? Okay. What version of Drupal was that?
That was when Drupal 5 was sort of in its ending, and Drupal 6 was just coming out.
All right. So compare the Drupal you discovered then to Drupal now.
Okay. So to Drupal 8 or Drupal 7 or both?
If I ask an open and
Okay.
leading question,
Okay.
then
All
you
right.
just run with
All right.
that.
That sense. So I'm going to compare it to Drupal 7 with some backports, maybe. But the Drupal I discovered first off, when I first installed it, I didn't understand that I needed CCK and all of these other modules to actually add fields to content and things like that. So I was really limited in what I knew what to do with Drupal, and I was left pretty much up to my own devices to read API docs. And so I created a lot of my own forms with Drupal and did a lot of like custom module development with
when
Drupal.
you when you were also still just recreating the.
Yeah, and so that was the Drupal I discovered, and then over time I sort of got more into contrib modules and best practices and things like that. So the Drupal that I know today is one where I don't write any code until I actually go and research and decide if anyone has done this already, and that's something that I also do now, just in PHP in general, looking for libraries and things like that. So It's a totally different world for me now, really looking at the whole landscape of what's available and getting rid of my not invented here that I had when I first started.
Okay, so you come at this all from a really technical perspective. How and when did you discover the community and the value of the community around Drupal?
It probably wasn't actually until I started working at ProMetSource, who are an Acquia partner here in Chicago. Before that, I had done a lot of work with Drupal, and I had understood that there was a community, sort of like a forum that I could go to and ask questions or find issues and things like that. But I hadn't interacted with a single person in real life, really until probably 2010. And ProMet were very active in meetups and things like that, and so that's where I really got opened up to the community, and they had sent me to a DrupalCon and things like that. So that was my exposure, was thankfully thanks to Andy at ProMet and all the stuff that he does with the community, getting me going on it too.
Shout out to Andy at ProMet. Thank you.
Yes.
Um, Talk about being an open source software developer.
So for me, like I take a lot of pride in being an open source software developer because to me it's almost a really religious sort of thing. That I look at it from the perspective of I don't like to work on projects when I find out that we can't give back in any capacity, especially in Drupal, because we've already taken so much to begin with that whatever like little bit we could give back would be so great. And so that's something that I really sort of get heated about at times, where I talk to people about, they say, oh, I don't have time, we don't have time to contribute, or things like that, or we're really busy and we just, we have all these cool modules and stuff and we'd like to open source them, but our company doesn't make any time for it. And I just want to strangle those managers and say, you know what, you're really not doing yourself any service here, because you're maintaining it's like you've bought in 35 to 40% of open source, but there's that whole 60% of getting other people looking at your code and fixing it and working together that they're not still buying into, and it's like all they've really bought into at that point is just, oh, I got some stuff for free, and it's so much more than that.
Right. Kathy Faze, actually in Chicago as well, has a great set of points that she calls the boss talk.
Mm-hmm.
And on the business side, talking with potential clients, I and many others might talk about things like, hey, if you commission this module but then you open source it, you've bought it once, but you get the upgrades for free because the community is going to work on it and optimize it and do all that stuff. But there's this wonderful other side of it that those managers need to hear about too. And Kathy made this very clear to me. Letting your developers work with an open source community like Drupal and submit their code and improve it in the community context. Well, they're working with hundreds, depending on the context, right? Hundreds or thousands of the best developers in the field. So they get every hour that they're actually doing that, they're getting essentially free training and best practices. And the Drupal community won't let you submit a line of code that's not up to standards and not secure and all that. So you're actually getting you're not just getting better software out of it, right? But you're getting better employees.
Yeah, that's a really good point. It's like free consulting for them too, really.
Yeah. Anyway, and funny that you said it's like a religious experience for you, because you are talking to the guy whose title includes the word evangelist. So anyway, we'll just skip right over that. So
I said it's not necessarily, I don't pay penance to Dries or anything like that, but
yeah. So what are you looking forward to most in Drupal 8?
I would say probably migrate in core. I think that's going to be a really big thing. I'm looking forward to it for two reasons. Number one, it's just going to really help me out because we use migrate all the time. But number two, I talk to so many people that are stuck on previous versions of Drupal, and to have that sort of exit strategy, or that concept of, okay, we've got to completely reevaluate the landscape because we have this old Drupal 6 site, so let's look at other CMS and see, because if we're gonna have to just move off of this anyway, like let's reevaluate Drupal, that's so good for Drupal because they're not going to be losing all these old sites potentially from Drupal 6, but actually showing that there's a clear path for them just to get upgraded, and also re-architect at the same time without losing anything from a content perspective. So just the fact that that's going to be available, I think, is great because it's the first time that we've had something like that out of the box in core.
So it's really the path of least resistance points straight to Drupal 8 now instead of who knows where. Describe give us a thumbnail sketch of the migrate functionality that Drupal 8 core is going to have.
So the migrate functionality pretty much is kind of a rewrite of migrate based on some different things that they had been doing with the newer versions of migrate. But essentially, the path is, it's still, you're re-architecting a site, and you're probably going to be writing a little bit of code still to do field mappings, but it's all done through the plugin system instead of through individual classes. So it uses the whole construct of core and its plugin system rather than its own OOP code completely. So it's extending plugin classes and things like that. So it's something that you can much more easily work with, whereas in Drupal 7 and 6 prior, while it was OO code, migrate was kind of OO sitting on top of Drupal. It's more embedded.
Right, so this is a tool where there is going to be we guess we're going to still call it an upgrade path or a migrate path, or I don't know, but from Drupal 6 straight to Drupal 8, from 7 straight to Drupal 8, and from other systems to Drupal 8, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
so if you're on WordPress or something, Drupal core would actually be able to slurp in your WordPress blogs and make them into articles or whatever.
Right, which is pretty wild. I don't know how many systems have built-in import tools for other systems, and I mean, maybe every single system has always had that except Drupal, and we're the last to get it, but it's a great idea.
Yeah, it'll be useful for some people, because they'll actually be able to evaluate whether or not Drupal will work for them in their organization much more directly by actually seeing some of their content or whatever, as opposed to having to sort of wait until you build out the site and then.
Right, and you can actually do really cheap demos of a platform change too, I imagine. I bet that's really exciting for a job like yours, right, where you're getting proofs of concept.
Yeah, precisely, because if they can provide us a data source, we'll be able to bring that in, so we can do a look and feel for them and actually use their data source to build a POC potentially. So I'm looking forward to being able to do that. And then on the other side of it, it's just what we do in the demo framework is all kind of migrate oriented because of the demo content gets delivered through a CSV file. So that's a pretty common practice that's used in distributions like it. And in this case, we kind of take that to another level. We're able to do content resets, and I'll talk about some of that later, but having all of that in core will make our lives easier as we upgrade the demo framework to Drupal 8, which is a plan for part of 2015 and 2016. Or try to have that by 2015 at least, and be working on it all this year.
Sure. So that nice segue. Let's so a couple more questions in this section, and then I'm going to let you go for it with your presentation. So, What word best describes Drupal?
Fluid. It's constantly moving. It's flexible in that sense. Plus, it just reminds me of water, and that's the whole sort of. I might say flexible too, but I like fluid because that's kind of leads to the Drupal logo.
Right. Everything in Drupal has to be a water reference.
Yeah, of course.
So one of the things that I've gotten extremely excited about as the Drupal 8 release cycle has gone on is all of the new stuff that we're incorporating into Drupal 8 that came from other communities, other projects, other open source things. As you mentioned, we've kind of gotten rid of the not invented here mentality. And I've had the chance to meet a lot more different software communities, a lot of people from Symfony and elsewhere, and I'm just incredibly excited by this toolbox that we're getting as open source practitioners. How do you feel about Drupal 8 uniting so many, so like on a technical and a community level, bringing so much together?
Well, I think it's really great because it's showing that we're moving away from the idea of Drupalisms, which is sort of another term for NIH within Drupal as a framework, to actually accept some of those things and potentially give back. I'm really excited about some of the conversations I've had with people about the future of Drupal and how Drupal in the future could end up being something a little bit more like Symfony full stack, and modules could end up being something more like projects that could be used in other systems. And so Drupal 8 is really the first step to that, is getting to the point where once we start decoupling and getting other systems into Drupal, the next step is really going to be saying what parts of Drupal are reusable and how can we actually make this so that somebody like Joomla could use some of Drupal. That would be really crazy.
Right.
Awesome.
Well, fixing making the Symfony routing component ready to be part of Drupal 8 took some work, and working on that also contributed directly to Easy Publish and to the Symfony CMS, because everybody's using that. So on the one hand, I think it's thrilling that our smart people and our innovative ideas are suddenly accessible to a lot more people. And I was talking with someone else, and it slips my mind exactly who, so I'm not going to say any names, but I was talking with someone who put up the idea of, hey, in that next step future that you were talking about, what if when you write a Drupal module, you're actually writing a PHP library?
Yep.
Right? That through Composer or through some whatever mechanism, right, is actually usable by this functionality can then be accessed by any projects who are involved in the standard. I think that would be, that would be a really interesting vision. And what, of course, then what is Drupal, what is not, is another set of problems that we're not going to talk about
I mean,
today.
I think at that point it's more what is what is Symfony and what is not. Is Silex Symfony? I mean, yes and no. So
right.
It sort of gets ambiguous there, but there'll still be. I don't think people should be afraid of this because I think there'll still be that Drupal that you can go and download that's prepackaged, and it'll have the core components. And what we call core will be, like I said, something kind of similar to the Symfony full stack framework. But then in cases where you have like distribution, this has been a long-standing question that has gone on with distributions, always asking for the ability to really change things about core, or not include pieces of core that they're not going to use. And so rather than doing like kind of crazy things like patching things out or just including modules but not actually turning them on is no longer going to have to be an option. You'll actually be able to package Drupal as different versions of Drupal, which will be really cool.
Yes, the loose coupling is very exciting. So I'm going to wrap up the podcast section of this. People listening to the podcast of this, embedded on the acquia.com/podcasts/something page for this is going to be a video, and that is Brant doing his session talking about the demo framework. And the demo framework is actually a Drupal distribution that started its life inside of Acquia, is now accessible to everyone in the community, and it is it is certainly one of the slickest and simultaneously easiest to use out of the box sales tools for you if you want to show a working functional Drupal doing really, really nice things to clients very, very quickly and easily. So, Brant, why don't you kick off? So, podcast listeners, thank you. Brant, thank you for talking with me. This is really, really fun. And why don't you kick off your presentation giving us just a tiny history of the demo framework, and then I am going to turn off my mic and turn off my camera and leave the next 30, 40 minutes to you.
Sure, yeah. So, quick history. When I came to Acquia at the end of 2012, this is the beginning of 2013, we effectively had a lot of different people working in sales, and everyone was kind of showing Drupal in different ways. there was not really a very unified pitch around Drupal. So one Acquia demo of Drupal that you might see might be completely different than another, and this was really difficult for us because we didn't have a consistent messaging. So it made for a really difficult sales cycle. And at the same time, there was a lot of rework being done by the different solutions architects that were working at Acquia. They were putting in a lot of extra hours, kind of rebuilding Drupal demos over and over, building sort of one-off POCs all the time, and none of it was reusable.
This has got to be really familiar to anybody in a web agency, anybody doing Drupal pitches on anything like a regular basis. So this is a very common problem.
Yeah, so that was sort of presented, here's the problem, and I was brought in as to work solutions architecture and give demos, but also work on some type of way, and I was basically just told, can you make our demos like more consistent and reusable? And this is sort of with working with Christian Yates and some other people within the department of solutions architecture, basically came up with the ideas around what would eventually become the demo framework. Which was originally just a prototype name. We were just like, we need this demo framework, and we just kind of kept the name in the end because it is it's specific to what it is. If we had called it something else, it would be confusing about what it was. So we just left the name as is, and it's something that we use every day now at Acquia, and partners are using it. And so, yeah.
All right, and where can I find that online?
So you can find it online on Drupal.org. It's project/df. Is the short name. So
cool.
That's a good way to search for it. Another place you can go to acquia.com/downloads/df, and you can actually just click try me, and it'll actually spin up a demo for you. We have kind of a one-click install going these days, so pretty cool.
Nice. Awesome. Anyone who's following along at home, the slides that Brent is about to present are shown on the Google Plus Hangout event page. There's a link to GitHub. I will also include that in the show notes when I repost this on acquia.com. Brent, go!
All right. So let me get my screen up real quick. And Jam, can you just confirm that my screen is being shown?
Oh, wait. Yes,
yeah?
when I'm not talking, I see demo framework with a Lego tribute
Perfect.
Drupal drop.
Sounds good. All right. So I talked a little bit about the demo framework, and we talked a little bit about myself already, but just to recap, my name's Brant Wynn. I'm a solutions architect at Acquia. I maintain the demo framework distribution. I also work on POCs, skunkworks type stuff at Acquia, R&D work, and a lot of it just revolves around what goes into this demo framework. On top of that, I work on the certification exams that some people have been taking, which is a fun sort of side project that I've been working on, and I also am one of our Tiger team D8 leads, so I basically help some people at Acquia get onboarded to Drupal 8. So yeah, and I'm Brant Wynn on Drupal.org, on Twitter, and the rest of the internet, so if you're looking for me, I'm pretty easy to find. So, selling Drupal. This idea of walking into a room and saying, here's Drupal, I'm going to set it down on the table and check it out for yourself. It's a packaged product. Obviously not the case, and even from a digital perspective, not actually the case. So selling Drupal can be a really confusing process. It can be difficult for really everybody involved. So you have stakeholders, everything from the person that just wants to know what is Drupal, is completely confused about the entire situation. They've really just heard of Drupal and they want to know more. You have people within organizations that know about Drupal and they've heard about it, but they don't know why they actually need it. They've been told by someone that, hey, we should use Drupal for X, Y, and Z, and they said, why? And then there's also this sect of people that don't actually know who it's for in the organization. So is it for the marketers that work here? Is it strictly something that the developers are going to be working with? Are we going to be using it for websites? Is it going to be used for applications? Really not understanding who can use Drupal within the organization is another confusing problem that people run into. So what we do at Acquia when we start talking to these people is sort of identify them as they're probably going to fall into one of these sections, and then we get a little bit more specific. So we say, who are they? And that might be their job, their role, just the current role that they're playing in CMS evaluation. So they're evaluating Drupal, they're looking at all the other competitors or whatever, and that's who they are. What makes them tick is another thing that is really important, because we want to know really how we can effectively talk to them. So we want to know what some of the things are that they do in day-to-day, what their job entails, and so on, how they're using Drupal. So if they're already using Drupal in their organization, finding out what they're currently doing with Drupal. If they're not using Drupal, it's more about how they will use Drupal. So understanding basically who they are, what they're doing at their organization, where Drupal fits into this situation, and then finally identifying what their frustrations are on any level. So if they're currently frustrated with the current system they're on, they want to get off of that system onto something else. They're using Drupal maybe, but they're not necessarily using it as effectively as they could. More often than not, with work, there's always going to be something that you're frustrated with, or some type of part of your life that can be made easier through some type of technology if it's implemented correctly. So finding where Drupal can fit in to actually make their lives easier is a super important part of understanding the audience. And so once you've done that and sort of decided, okay, this person is a marketer, or they're a developer, or they work in IT, maybe they're a business stakeholder or a CEO, that can really craft how you're going to start telling the story to these people when you demo Drupal.
Brent, am I supposed to see your slides right now, or you?
You're supposed to see the slides.
Okay. Try sharing that again somehow.
Okay, let me see. So you were watching me the whole time?
For the last minute or two, yeah.
Oh, okay.
You were on a roll, though, so I didn't want to,
What about now? Nope, I'm still me. Okay. All right. So, yeah?
Yes.
Okay, great. So you guys missed some GIFs. Yeah, we had some entertaining ones, like these guys, her, these different stakeholders, Alf, people that don't understand what they do within their organization. And here's the slide that I was talking over for the majority of the time, talking about what people do and who they are, and how we identify them as an audience. So it gets to the point where, they're ready to see something, and you want to show them something that's going to really wow them. And this is where Drupal historically has, fallen and really stumbled at times in these situations. So, one thing that people like to do is they pull up, they're in the middle of a sales call, or they're in the room with someone, and they pull up Drupal.org, and they just sort of start talking about Drupal with the example of showing different module pages and everything. And this site is a great site. If you're familiar with Drupal, you probably use it all the time. And if you're a contributor to Drupal, you spend most of your life on this website, and that's really what this website is for. It's for people that are contributing to Drupal, people that are already using Drupal a lot, people that need information. So it's really developer-oriented. It's not really marketer-oriented or business stakeholder-oriented. Most of its content is around how you're actually going to technically implement Drupal, and not so much about how Drupal is a good business use case. They do have this little Sites Made with Drupal, which is nice, and I'll get into why that's not necessarily the best demo either in the next slide. So let's say that the White House slide is up on Drupal.org, and you click on that, and you say, okay, so I'm looking at the White House website now, and I see that it's on Drupal. I can't log into the White House website, and to me it really just looks like a website, so it could be anything at that point. And there are times also where people in different organizations that are showing Drupal will show a client website, and they'll actually be able to log into it, but they can't really necessarily make changes because it's a dev website, or they might actually have a lot of specific architectural things that they've done with Drupal that they'll end up spending more time around the implementation of Drupal and what they had to do to change Drupal, and really the story of how this Drupal website came to be, or how it works, more than how Drupal works. And so that's not necessarily a good way to show Drupal either, because you're at that point you're telling a story more about whitehouse.gov, and Drupal goes into the background, and it's not so much about Drupal being successful. So it's great if you're just saying, oh, all of these different great organizations, big time people are on Drupal.org, in order to give it sort of like what I like to call street cred. But it's not really good for a demo, because you can't actually show people how they'll really be using Drupal. So the next way that people show Drupal, and this happens, I think, fairly frequently, and this is we went ahead and we just sort of threw together a quick Drupal demo for a client because they, in this case, they probably specifically said, we want to see groups, we want to see group management in Drupal. So someone probably spent the better part of, a couple of days or whatever setting up this sort of group website for sort of a demo of out-of-the-box Drupal that could show some functionality. So this is a really poor way to show Drupal. It's not a good representation of what Drupal actually is, and it's confusing to people because while it is Drupal out of the box, this looks like core with maybe the organic groups module turned on and some other stuff. It's not necessarily a story that they can follow and see. It's just, here's a list of all the different functionalities you told us that you need, and in a very quick and dirty, ugly sort of way, we've thrown this together. And that can leave a really poor impression on people, especially on people on the marketing side of things, because they get so focused on branding and all of those things. And so when they see that this is Drupal, they might completely be overlooking the message that you're trying to tell, just because of the fact that this is not necessarily what they really thought that they were buying into. So while you're able to log in and make changes, you're still not in a really good position, and you probably spent a lot of time working on this and crafting it for the specific client, and then as soon as they're out the door, it's not really reusable for anyone else. So the takeaway for people oftentimes is this is more complicated than I really thought, and I don't know if I'm ready to really ingest this information. And it's not putting them in a state where they are, actively thinking about Drupal at that point. They're more thinking about, is there something else that's a little bit easier that I can understand? So in coming across these problems at Acquia, we decided that, there have been good demos we've given, there have been bad demos, and everything between, but the formula that we came up with for success was pretty much threefold. First off, it's all about storytelling. So you want to be a really good storyteller. You want someone to be able to sit back, relax, and watch a case study, watch a demo, while passively taking in all the information. So if you don't want to be going through a checklist of features and making sure that the guy with the RFP in front of him is checking off features. You want that to all be happening very organically through a pitch that have well crafted. So that's where number 2 comes in. You basically decide, based on the script, how you're going to pitch this, how you're going to follow, how there's going to be a flow that you're going to run through this, and you're going to use the same demo every time for these situations, and that's where standardization comes in. So you make a reusable demo that you can effectively give to everyone in the organization. They all know the script, they've been able to perfect their particular pitch, their nuances, how they go through, but everyone is fairly well standardized at this point, and that makes for an effective messaging, because if down the line, say, someone's unavailable for a follow-up call, we can bring in someone else and they can bring up the same demo and really pick up where someone else left off, because we're all standardized. So that's where Demo Framework comes in, obviously, matching for all of these things. And that's, in this case, that's the distribution. You're installing the distribution in the Demo Framework, and it is basically matching your use case. So an often used adage, there's a module for that in Drupal. In this case, for demos, there really is a distribution for that. You could use other distributions if you want for demos. I'm not going to say that you shouldn't use Commerce Kickstart to show commerce. I'm not saying that you shouldn't show Atrium for community or commons or anything like that. But those have been crafted to specifically be production type websites to be built out, whereas the Demo Framework has the specific idea that it comes with a script, it comes with the idea, it's very sort of lightweight in its content, and you're basically following our patterns and building on top of that. And so you basically are taking all of these great modules from Drupal and having them installed, ready to go. And you're standing on the shoulders of giants in that case, because you have all these best practices lined out for you, and it's really just at that point up to you to enable your client by telling a good story. So when it comes to open source and working, and this is something that we found in working on the Demo Framework, we very much could have easily forked Drupal or something and taken it in and built our own proprietary distribution and just shared it amongst Acquians, and that was sort of it. And we could have really kind of cool but not reusable for everyone else. we didn't want to do that. We wanted to follow the open source ethos, and so this is why we made it open source, because ultimately, we were using existing work. We wanted to build on top of that existing work and make it better. So we've been able to work on things like media in Drupal and improve parts of Drupal, and it's not only made Drupal better for us, but for everyone else. But it's allowed us to basically say, our job is to evangelize Drupal, like Jam said, but at the same time, while we're working on it, we may as well build and pay it forward, and because that's going to help everyone in the process. So, following these rules on any project you're working on with open source is something that I recommend, and it's something that we've done. So at that, it's time for a demo. What I'm going to do now is jump into a couple of case studies for a couple of different user personas in our demo, and I'll be talking about basically I'll be talking over what I would pitch to someone who's new to Drupal. So I have this site that's spun up, and it is called World Travel Nexus. And World Travel Nexus is a content curator, but they're also a travel reseller. So they have blogs on their site. So you see this Bike the USA blog, but then they also have packages. So they're actually selling. They have e-commerce on this site. They also run contests. Basically, their idea is to be very social, have a lot of good content for people to be coming back to the site frequently, and ultimately being able to sell trips to their potential customers that visit the site. So there's different things, articles, some videos on the site. We can see how there's some Twitter stuff that's been brought in through feed and things like that. So we can really see how Drupal integrates with some external systems. And it also does really cool things for personalization. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to log in as a girl named Jennifer. So Jennifer is a woman that has visited this site before. She already signed up and made an account, and in doing so, she answered a couple of questions to us, sort of what type of vacation would you like to go on? Are you interested in tropical vacations? Are you interested in more business trips? Things like that. And so her answer was I was more interested in tropical vacations. And so at that point, we knew that about her. And when she's logged into the site, the homepage changes, and we see that she has content that's targeted for her. So we see island life, tropical paradise, package, a contest about a Caribbean vacation, and so on. So if I look at Jennifer's account, what we have built into this demo is her actual user persona. So if you can see this on the screen, her persona is an end user. So she's someone who's visiting the site, she's viewing its content, she's looking for stuff that's interesting and relevant to her. When we talk about what makes her tick, really just interesting and relevant content. She's a regular web user. She's evaluating products, she might buy something, she wants to be able to navigate the site very easily and find the things she's looking for. She doesn't actually know that she's using Drupal, so when we ask how she's using Drupal, she's just looking for content that's relevant to her wants and needs and clicking on things and writing reviews, maybe blogs at some point on a site, but isn't necessarily a back-end user. And what frustrates her is sites that she can't figure out, sites that aren't easy to navigate, ones that she's not able to access easily. So also we see here, so these are the interests that I talked about earlier. So these interests are tied to Jennifer. She can change these if she wants, and it changes some of the personalization on the site, which is helpful to her. So if we go back to the homepage, what we'll see is this contest for win a tropical Caribbean vacation. And so that sounds like something that would be really cool. So Jennifer's going to go ahead and check that out. And we can see now that there is a call to action here for her to enter this contest. So she actually wants to enter the contest, so she'll just click on that. And what happens now is a little bit of demo stuff happens here, where we see that it says we've transmitted lead scoring to Marketo. So this gray box up at the top is not necessarily something that Jennifer would see per se, but it's something that we show in this demo so that we can basically say that there's something that's happened on the back end. What actually happened was that there's a module called rules in Drupal, and a rule fired when she entered this contest. This contest is really just a group in Drupal. She's been segmented into this group, and that has become redundant across another system. So we've essentially sent a lead score to Marketo that says that Jennifer is a lead, and she's definitely someone who's interested in winning a Caribbean vacation. So now we can follow up with email or whatever we need to do because we have her in that user segment. We also see that some things changed on the page when she entered the contest. So we can see that there's now a call to action to actually book a trip. And there's some product reviews that other contestants are talking about some other things. So she can click on some of these, and these are all call to actions that are actually going to lead her to products. So the only thing that she can really click on now is to go to a product, which is really what our end goal was. We wanted to get her engaged and maybe you know, drive that lead into some type of generating a sale. So she went ahead and clicked on the Tropical Paradise at Reasonable Rates trip, and she's looking at this now. She sees that there's some product reviews. She sees here are the sort of the interests that that revolve around it. So she can search based on those, and she can also there's e-commerce right here. So she could add this to her cart. And this is a really cool part of Drupal, where basically you have e-commerce and the community aspect and the content all built into one. So when you might hear about content, community, and commerce in Drupal, this page really sort of embodies this. We have content, but we also have product that's tied to the actual price of the trip and the cart, and then we also have this community aspect where people are actually interacting with this and writing product reviews and what have you. So all that built in, she can go ahead and add the product to her cart, and we'll see that once that's added, she gets a notification that the package has been added. She can open up her cart and look at it. And at this point, you know, we can talk about Drupal. Its integrations for e-commerce are deep. You can, you know, really do any type of checkout system you want. So if we view the cart, we could go through an entire e-commerce checkout with any number of integrations based on, you know, how they wanted to sell products. And you know, this is Drupal Commerce. So not necessarily a great demo at this point. You know, I'm not going to fill out a bunch of forms and put in a fake address or anything, but we'll just say that she went ahead and bought the vacation and returned to the site a month later. So now she's returned to the site and she went on a vacation. We see there's a little bit of different context shifting on the homepage. We still have her basic interests that are aligned, but we actually see a different article because we know that she already entered the contest. Therefore, we don't want to show that call to action to her anymore. It's not useful. So what we're going to do is provide her a different link. But at the same time, you know, her recent package is still there because she could potentially buy it again if she wanted to or whatever. But what she wanted to do actually is go ahead and visit it. And scrolling through some of the reviews, she really had a good time, and she's going to write her own review. So I clicked Write Your Own Review, and now I've opened up a basic content editing part of Drupal. So I'm editing content now as Jennifer, but I'm doing so as an end user, so I don't have a lot of options in the WYSIWYG. So I basically have an end user role or an authenticated user. They're given a really basic, the ability to just, you know, post content, but they're filtered, so they're not going to be able to add in, you know, anything that would be spammy or whatever. And she's going to go ahead and say, yeah, I had a great time. So just a quick product review so you can see this. She can go ahead and save her review, and immediately will be sent back to the product page where we can see here's Jennifer and there's her review. So just a really quick end user demo that we can look at for, you know, how someone will use a website like Drupal and some of the strengths of Drupal on, you know, sort of a front end level. So that leads us now, though, really to, this is really where people might start asking, like, you know, hey, can we see something a little bit more than that? This looks like a regular website. And this is where we dive into really sort of the meat and potatoes of this demo. And in doing so, I'm going to log in as a content curator or an editor. And her name is Erica. Now, logging in as Erica, we'll see that she has her own personalization settings. You know, she's a user like anyone else. So she sees this content about Big Air at Big Sky, and she sees some other contests and things like that. But more importantly, what she sees is this toolbar at the top. So Erica, as an editor, has access to some of the back-end features of Drupal. So she's able to open up this menu, and she can see that she has a workbench. She can view a content listing. She can see some of the site structure and work with that. She can manage products from the store and configure some other light things. So she's not a full-on admin of Drupal. She doesn't have access to edit everything, but she can edit content. But one thing that's important to note about Erica, in her ability to edit content, she can't actually publish her changes. So let's look at what happens with that. So we have this piece of content that says Big Air at Big Sky. I'm going to go ahead and click on it, and I'm going to open it up, and we'll be looking at basically, you know, this published version of the content. And what Erica wants to do is she's looking at the content title, and she's thinking maybe not everybody, especially international visitors or whoever, not too familiar with Big Sky, and let's know what state it's in. So she goes up to the top here and looks at this pencil icon and clicks on it, and that is going to immediately open up an inline editing mode. So now she's able to edit the content and make changes right on top of the content view, so she can actually see what it'll look like while she's working on it. So she's going to go ahead and say Big Air at Big Sky, Montana. It's going to be the new title that I'd like to change this to, and she'll save that. And what we'll note here is that when I click on the Moderate tab, now that I've made that change, I'm kicked into the back end. We see our Chrome, everything around here has changed a little bit. But what's important to note is that now what I had was a published revision, and what I have now is a draft. So we've actually done a state change where we've changed the title. And if we view the revisions, so if we say compare revisions right here at the top, I can actually open this up and see, based on what happened, we updated the title through in-place editing. So if I go ahead and click View Published again and go back into the site, I see that the title isn't changed. But what I do see here at the top is this new button that says View Draft. And if I click View Draft, I can see that I'm actually looking at the changes that I've made. I can go ahead and continue to work on the draft. I can open up inline editing and change some things with the body here, you know, so if I want to bold some text or whatever, I could do that, or what have you. I won't bother right now. For now, I'm going to say that this change was enough. I really just wanted, as Erica, I just wanted to change the title. And so now I'm thinking that this is probably ready to go live. Didn't make a major change. So I need to go through a workflow to basically be able to accomplish this. So I'm going to go ahead and edit this draft. And I can see that, you know, this is a new draft from the current revisions, and I have other actions to create drafts or whatever. We can see some of the different content editing, that's taxonomy terms that have been assigned these interests, and probably really importantly, if I click on revision information, I can see that the moderation state is set to draft. And I'm going to go ahead at this point then and say I want to change this to needs review. And I'm going to just log that this is edited by me. Let's be more specific. All right. And I'll go ahead and save that. So now we can see that this draft has been kicked into a needs review state. If we go back to moderate, we can see that there's been a change here. So that original draft that was created has now been changed. And we can go ahead and look at revisions if we want to. And this is sort of where it ends for Erica. Erica has now kicked this forward to another individual within the organization. And in this case, I'm going to go ahead and go back to the site and log out from Erica. And I'm going to log in as a reviewer. So a reviewer in this case is another editor, probably Erica's boss. And in this case, his name's Paul. And so one thing that I skipped over in the interest of time was just the whole user persona of an editor. Erica and Paul have really similar user personas, and I'm going to go ahead and open up Paul's user persona here and just sort of look at him. So who he is, he's someone that creates new content. This is true for he and Erica. They both review and edit posted content, but the difference is really for Paul the fact that he can approve content to the production environment. All the things that make them tick and frustrate them, whether it's things around editing content and syndicating it, is pretty much around needing this type of workflow so that they can remove things like mistakes, misprints, explicit content that didn't actually need to make it on the site that did for some reason, whatever it might be, they need a workflow. So now that I'm logged in as Paul, what I can do is I can open up the admin menu and I can click on My Workbench, and I can go ahead and see this nice overview of all the different content that's on the site. I can see things that I've been editing recently as Paul, so it looks like Paul's actually been writing some dummy product reviews to kind of flesh out the site. Deceptive Paul. But what we have here is a Needs Review tab, and Paul's going to go ahead and click on that. And he sees this Needs Review tab, and he probably, in this case, like a rule probably fired. He got an email or whatever that said that Erica had something that was ready for him, so he knew that he needed to go to this page. This is something that's pretty common in Drupal. You know, as these state changes happen, you can queue off whatever you need, messages, notifications to people, or it might just be part of Paul's regular everyday job to log in the morning and check out and see if there's anything on the Needs Review tab. So he gets here, he sees that Erica has some stuff that needs review, and it's on this Big Sky content. So he's going to go ahead and visit this content, and we'll see the content as it was. Nothing's changed, and he can just go ahead and do view draft just as Erica had before. And the big difference here, obviously, the content title changed. So he's going to go ahead and hit moderate, and basically he's going to say, yep, this looks good to Erica, and he can go ahead and publish it. If he didn't want to publish it, he could send it back to draft and tell Erica why he didn't want that title change, but in this case he's going to say it looks good. He'll click save, and that's that. So now we see this is turned green. We no longer have a view draft button, we have a new draft button, and we have a view published link, and we can see that now the title has been changed. So pretty cool thing where they were able to go through a workflow and eliminate any mistakes by having some type of auditing system. And these states can be extended in Drupal. You can add new states if you want. So if you have a legal team that has to review stuff, if you have specific things need translating, you can mark something that needs translation. It's really flexible system, Workbench, and it's something that you should check out for Drupal. So another thing that Paul does on this site sometimes is he works on these different campaigns. And in this case, he wants to work on a campaign based on some of his own interests. So we go back to the site. It looks like Paul's really interested in Europe, and in this case, he's interested in. It looks like his primary interest is Munich, and he's thinking, you know, probably what they're going to do at Nexus is add some Munich vacations to this this site soon. And so what he wants to do is go ahead and change this content and see if he can make it a little bit more engaging. So we'll go ahead and open up. On his site, the structure menu, and within the structure menu, Paul has access to collections, and Paul's going to look at this collection list, and he sees that there's already a collection called Munich Calling, and what he's going to do is use this collection to bundle together content and release it all at once. And not only that, but he's going to be able to take this collection of content and preview what the site will look like when that content is published. So if you think about the scenario of, say, like the Super Bowl, in the Super Bowl, two teams go in, but one team ultimately is the champion. And so you might have two different collections. If you are the NFL, you would have a collection for whether, say, like the Chicago Bears win the Super Bowl, or you have a collection for when the New England Patriots win the Super Bowl. And you want to publish one or the other, but as you work on this content, you want to be able to see what the website would look like in the future. And that's where the site preview system comes in Drupal. So site preview system, another really cool feature in Drupal that works with these collections. So I'm going to go back to the site, and I'm going to go ahead and look at this Munich content. And as Paul, what I'm worried about now is what would happen if I changed this photo. So if I change the photo of Munich to something else, I know that on the home page it's not going to look the same as it does here. There's some text in front of it, it's bigger. I want to make sure that it translates well so that before I publish it, it'll look good. And I'm going to go ahead and use the site preview system to do that. So I'll click on New Draft, and I'm going to load up this content editing screen that we saw earlier. And in this case, what I'm going to do is look at the image field here, and I'm going to remove it. And now I'm going to click Browse, and I'm opening up this content chooser, and I'm able to look at the library of all the different images that are available on the site. If I wanted to, I could also upload an image. So in this case, just for the sake of time, I'm just going to go ahead and grab another photo. In this case, I'm just going to switch this really quickly to Chicago because we're in the middle of a demo. It's not really necessary. So we'll say for this case, Paul just wants to see what the Chicago one would look like on the homepage. And in this case, he's going to go ahead and use the Munich calling thing. And so, again, we're using a Chicago image, but really, in real life, Paul probably has a nicer photo of Munich available that I don't have on hand right now. Apologize. So we're going to make sure this is a draft. So if we look at publishing options, this is a draft. And most importantly, again, I've added this to the site preview collection. And now I'm clicking Save. So I'm saving a draft, and I'm actually putting this draft as a part of the collection. So what that means is that I'm still viewing the draft, and I can see this photo. But more importantly, when I go to the home page, while I still see right now on the home page the original content, there is this clock at the top, what we can see is an interactive preview. And as I hover over it, I can open it up, and I can see here's my site preview. And I'm able to select a collection from the site preview system, in this case the Munich Calling selection, and I'm able to enable it. And in enabling it now, what I've done is I've brought in the draft. So now I can see everything that was in the collection. So if I had 10 pieces of content on the collection, everything would change. And now I'm able to surf around the site and see what this photo looks like in different places. So as it turns out, this photo, it looks like it's a little bit granular once it's blown up, so probably wouldn't be the best photo to choose for a homepage splash. Good to know. I wouldn't have known that if I had just published it. I would have had to unpublish and roll back things, and that would not have been cool. If I click on travel guides, which is what this content is, I can see what this looks like in the grid. So there it is, and we can see its twin because we stole a photo. And so that's a really great, useful tool. The site preview system gives you the ability to actually see what the site will look like in the future given a certain use case. Site preview system could also be tied into just scheduled publishing, not necessarily collections. So it's a flexible, extendable system used by quite a few different organizations in Drupal to manage their content workflows and be able to preview stuff. And while we're on the topic of previews, one other cool feature I'd like to show while I have the site preview open is this page layout preview. So right next to the site preview, there is this responsive preview. And when I open it up, I can actually see that there's some different preset devices. So what I'll do is I'll click iPhone 5, and what will happen is this site will pop up, and it's going to load. And here's what it looks like on an iPhone. And I can go ahead and rotate. And so these are tools for content editors, for designers, for people that are working with Drupal, and they want to know what the content is going to look like in these different resolutions. As we know, responsive is super important. So we need to be able to see, hey, the title actually wraps here on an iPad. As a content editor, I know that I can make a change, basically that maybe I want to just have a better title that's works better for that case. As a designer, I might want to say, okay, maybe in this case we want to reconsider the height of or the width of the kerning on the text and work with these different things. So I can rotate the iPad and do all of this right within Drupal without having to say get out a bunch of devices and try it out. So a really useful tool. You can add your own devices to it and do lots of basically different scenarios for what will happen. And of course, I can always turn off the preview and go back to the way that things were before. So that's content editing in Drupal and content previews and workflows. Some really cool tools that your content editors can take advantage of. But then there's probably one other user that I'd like to talk about if I have time, and that person is a digital marketer. So I'm going to go ahead and log out as Paul, and I'm going to log in as a digital marketer named Emily. So Emily is a digital marketer, like I said, and her whole deal at Nexus is she's on Twitter, she's on social media, she's promoting these different, oops, I must have had a typo. Oops. So she's on the site and she's promoting different content and what have you, and she needs to be able to create landing pages very quickly, dynamically, easily. So she doesn't really necessarily have time. She has to be really flexible. Things are constantly happening. She doesn't have time to necessarily go to a designer, say, design me out a landing page, and then go to IT and say, execute on it, build it out. This can be, a 2-week process for some organizations just to get a landing page up. And all the landing page is supposed to function for is, to sit on the site and be a place to drive and generate leads into. So, track it with UTM parameter or whatever. So she needs to be able to create these on her own. So now that I'm logged in as Emily, I'm going to go ahead and open up the shortcuts here. And I see that I have a shortcut called Add Landing Page. So I'll click on that. And I see now I'm actually creating a new piece of content in Drupal. But I don't have a lot of different fields to work with. I'm going to build that dynamically later. So for now, what I'm going to say is I want to get people to come to London. So I'm going to go ahead and say, summer in London is great. If I had any campaign identifiers, integrations with other systems, I could go ahead and bring these in. I can go ahead and tag this really quick. London, UK, that sort of thing, promo. If I need to make a specific menu link and add it to the nav, temporarily or permanently, I can do that. I can go ahead and set the path. So in this case, I just want to make the path London. So we'll go to nexus.com/London. I can actually drive people specifically to the URLs that I want to. I have an entire plethora of fields and things available for meta tags. I can use available tokens within Drupal, so I can take the summary or the site name and things like that and actually drop those in. So that's really cool stuff we can do. Cool tools, and more importantly, just creating a draft, working on something on the fly. So I'll click Save. And once this is saved, we can see that all I've got is this blank slate. It's just summer in London. It's great. So what I want to do now is build out this page. And you'll see that what has changed for Emily as she's logged in is this specific ability to use a new menu at the bottom of the page. And this menu says customize this page or change this layout. And what she's going to do is click customize this page. And what will pop open now is this whole grid view of columns that she can go ahead and start adding things to. So she can go ahead and click this plus and add a new pane in this case, and this nice little modal comes up, and she's able to say add a map. So she clicks add map, and in doing that, she's asked to enter an address. So she can say London, and immediately she gets this nice preview feedback, and here's a map of London that's been dropped in. So that's cool. She can go ahead and drop that map in, and this is just a widget now that she can work with. She can drag and drop it around in the layout. She can make changes to it. She could go ahead and edit it or delete it, whatever she needs to do. And so she's flexibly building a page right now. Another example, maybe adding a piece of media. So let's just go ahead and browse for a London photo, maybe from the library. And so here is a nice photo of London. I'll go ahead and put that in. So here's London Bridge, and I can go ahead and do anything else. So if I had a snippet from any other sort of third party like Facebook, Twitter, whatever, if they had given me some HTML, I even have the ability to drop in these little snippets, but it's filtered HTML, which is nice. So it's basically locking her in, and she's working within the design of the site now. She's got styles available to her, things like that. So we'll go ahead and save this. And importantly enough, she's not limited to this single layout. So she can actually change the layout by clicking the Change This Layout button. And we'll see that there's actually a plethora of layouts for her to choose from. In this case, maybe she'll actually choose a different layout. Let's sort of flip the switch here and have the slider on one side and the gutter on the other side, and just have 3 columns rather than 6. 3 columns with 6 within. And so we can see how that changes very quickly, and she's able to then continue to make changes. So at this point in time, she may have a designer give her some like splash imagery to work with, and she can sort of drag and drop. If she needs to add something to this page dynamically, say she's just got a block that she wants to drop in, she can go ahead and do that. So if she wants to go ahead and add some more text or whatever, she doesn't have to go back to designer or whoever to do that for her. And she can just do that very quickly and easily. So great tools for her as a digital marketer. So some different tools in Drupal that we show, basically with the idea that there are a lot of different user personas, a lot of different types of people that are potentially using the system. And so that is sort of the basic demo that we do. I can also log in as an admin at times, and I'll show a lot more back-end stuff, things like that. But that's basically what we do. So I'm ready for questions if we have time.
Grant, thank you so much. That was very, very cool.
Certainly.
I have a question for you. We pitched this as, hey, it's out there on Drupal.org, and it's a fast way for you to make a reusable, reproducible demo, right? But how much of that do I get when I go and download it right now?
So that entire demo that I showed is a scenario for the demo framework. So I'm going to really quick just pull up my screen again, if you don't mind, and show you a page that will sort of make that more clear. So if we think about on here, when I open up as an admin, I'm able to see actually a number of different available scenarios based on what's available. We provide 2 scenarios out of the box from the Drupal.org version, and we've also been working on some other scenarios in-house that we plan to hopefully release soon. So if I log in as an admin and we look at this, what I'll see when I first install the demo framework is this page that just tells me to choose a scenario. And once I choose a scenario, then what will happen is using both the features module and migrate, we're going to run this automated process that will not only enable all of the different content and things like that for Drupal, but it'll also import with migrate. And so that's super useful as well, because you can see that while this demo is not available, this digital marketer demo, the WEM demo that we saw is available, and there's a button here to reset it. So what that means is that even though I changed the content for with Erica earlier to add Montana to the content, or I changed some stuff as Paul and I kind of mucked it up, I can really quickly just click reset. And what's going to happen now is we're going to actually roll back all of the content using the migrate module, and it's going to re-import it based on the default state. So I could give this demo again from the beginning and do it exactly the same way I did before without any, oh, this is from earlier when I was doing some stuff, sorry about that, sort of like walking around and being very careful. And this prevents the demos from becoming stale. So this is the framework that you get, and you're able to basically build your own scenarios on top of it using some simple hooks that we have provided, and just by introducing your own migrate classes. So there's a ton of documentation around this on the site if you click the documentation link on Drupal.org on the project. And we really recommend people, as a good place to start is just maybe fork the WEM demo that I gave and start making changes to it and figure it out from there, and you can go ahead and build your own demo.
Right, and then you make it your own. That's you've always, you've got the best chances if you're doing something that you've really put together yourself or really gotten very comfortable with anyway. Is that series of things that you did with the different user personas shown as a suggested script in the documentation?
It is, yeah. So what you can do also is you can enable the advanced help module if you have the demo framework installed, and then what will be provided is an actual script, like the full script I went through basically for each user that you can study, and it has little screenshots available for you so you can follow through. So all the documentation, including the user personas and sort of what makes them tick, also the script, are built into the demo. And that's a practice we recommend for people that are building them for their own organizations too.
You guys have thought of everything. I have one question from the event page today, and the question says, the demo is all Panoply, I see. Is Panoply the future in Drupal?
Well, I think that's an unfair statement to say that the demo is all Panoply. The demo is very panels heavy, and we definitely use a little bit of Panoply in the case of the layouts that they provide. Those are great layouts. We don't actually use anything else from Panoply besides its live preview widget. So there are 2 modules from Panoply in the demo framework, but panels is used extensively. We recommend a panels architecture. Commons also runs entirely on panels using Panelizer. I find panels to be very useful, and I do think that the future of Drupal might be more sites that are built using things like panels, built by people like the digital marketer. But as far as Panoply being pervasive and taking over Drupal, they've definitely done a really good job in marketing that namespace and sort of adopting panels as their own. But what they've actually done is built a nice distribution that installs some stuff on your behalf. So Panoply may or may not even exist in Drupal 8, but panels in some capacity will. And so I definitely think that those are useful tools. And okay, Panoply is very cool.
So panels good, Panoply very cool. Thank you for the San Francisco, that's a Chapter 3 Pantheon, that group of people distribution, if I recall correctly. Is that right?
That's correct. So Matt Cheney
exactly.
is the maintainer of it.
Ah, thank you, Matt. It's fun. I see sometimes when I'm talking with people about client projects that panels is really powerful, really good if you wrap your head around how it works, and really good for devs and site builders. I've seen it go pretty wrong when you give panels configuration access to end users.
Mhm.
It's very, very powerful, i.e. you can screw a lot of stuff up too. So
Yeah.
you gotta, I think using panels, you have to think 2 or 3 times about what you leave available to the end users if they're not Drupal experts.
Yeah, for sure. And in this case, in the demo, we sort of leave things fairly open, but you actually see that there's a lot more things available if you were to log in as an admin and start doing things with panels versus if you were to log in as Emily. So the idea being that while Emily has access to a lot of layouts, we probably wouldn't actually give her access to all of those layouts. We'd probably give her access to like maybe 5 to choose from. And we might prevent Emily from using specific widgets, but basically we try to put the handcuffs on these people so that they do a really good job working within the design style guide of the site, but they still are enabled. And that's really the important part. They need to feel enabled. They need to be able to use the tools in order for the organization to function. So
Right.
it's a trade-off.
They should have the freedom to do everything that they should be able to do as well as possible, and the peace of mind to know that no matter what they click, they're not going to break anything.
Precisely.
Cool. Hey, Brant, thank you so much. Again, thanks for taking the time to show us this. This is Jams Virtual Drupal Camp, which is an offshoot of the Acquia podcast, where I talk with people about open source Drupal, technology, community, business stuff. And this will be up online as a podcast and as a video of the demo in the next couple of months. Brant, it is way past my dinner time here in Cologne, so I'm signing off. Thanks again. It was cool. I will see you in Austin, I hope.
Yes, you will. I'll see everyone
Excellent.
in Austin.
Take care.
All right. Bye.